devices. I just want to say I'm so honored to be here. I think what you're doing here is like the future of public health, and it can't be done soon enough. I'm a person in long-term recovery, which means for me that I've not had to use drugs, alcohol, or pills, pot, or power since February 22nd, 2011. I'm doing that. And that's by virtue of the fact that I attend 12-step meetings everywhere I go, and I've got a meeting guide app that takes me to the closest meeting wherever it is. And I also, on the car ride to that meeting, I can go to on a virtual meeting, and I've got cities across America logged onto my phone so that literally I have a meeting 24/7 whenever I choose to do one. And in person, I've got one down the street, anywhere I am. So when people in recovery say that they're gratefully recovering, I think they're gratefully recovering because they have a ready-made organization of people that understand who they are and what their struggles are, and isn't isolation about feeling disconnected. I don't feel disconnected when I'm amongst my fellow drug addicts and alcoholics. We talk about the disease of addiction. We're all people in recovery from the disease, but I'll go rogue and say drug addicts and alcoholics, because we kind of got to keep our humility in check that, you know, at the end of the day, we're only a drink or drug away from ending up in death or locked up or either in jail or an institution. It's just the reality, and if you never believed it, just look at the statistics today of overdoses and suicides to know that that sense of disconnection is what's causing these deaths of despair, because people feel like they're not able to identify that someone else is going through what they're going through. And when anyone comes into a meeting and they think that their lives are over, as I did when I first started going to meetings, that you know, no one will understand what they've been through. I always tell them, in a few years, you're going to tell your story, and there's going to be someone whose life is going to be changed because you were able to make it through the very same things that they need to make it through. And because we're all thinking about ourselves. It's that self-centeredness that for those of us in recovery, we are the ones that are victimized by our own self-centeredness to the max. And so when we're told that actually this is not about us getting better, but it's about us having purpose, us having a way to take our story and help someone else not feel so alone because of what they're going through. When I left the United States Congress, because my illness is a progressive illness, if I don't work on it, it gets worse, not better. And I had to leave Congress as a result, and I left everything I knew, everybody I knew, and started by going to recovery meetings all the time. I felt like my life was behind me, like everything that I could never look forward to anything. 5 years into recovery, I get a phone call from the speaker's office. And they wanted me to come back and do an intervention on one of my former colleagues. Because, you know, anyone else talking to a sitting member of Congress, that congressperson is going to be like, yeah, just like I was. Like, no one could do it. No lobbyist could do an intervention on me. None of my staff, nobody else. And you could have all the experts in the world come in, like Nora Volkow from NIDA, and say, Patrick, you got a problem. And I'm like, yeah. All I did was go into their office and say, let me tell you what it was like trying to do this job with an 800-pound gorilla on my back, and how I had to struggle every day to make it through. I got about 10 minutes into my story, and they're like, how did you know? I said, because this is what happened to me. And you can either do what I did for too long and think that you can just manage your way out of it because you've got all kinds of people to take care of it for you, or you can save your own life and finally get some help. My point is that no matter what walk of life, I see this, as all of us do, what's going on with Hunter Biden, how addiction has totally affected not only his life, but every single person in his family's life. And I think to myself, I can't imagine the good work that Hunter Biden can do in the future, because he experienced the depths of despair. He experienced all the usual, by the way, their usual kind of characteristics of these illnesses. And there are going to be people in powerful places who are going to be struggling. And Hunter Biden's going to walk in the room, and their blood pressure is going to go down, because they're not going to feel as alone, because he's in the room to talk to them about his own recovery. That's the power of service. And in recovery, the keystone of service is to help the next suffering alcoholic. It's not to get better ourselves, although we have to get better to help others. It's to help the next suffering alcoholic. When I was growing up, I was so fortunate because I had this sense that my life was going to be about service. I don't know what it was, but I remember in first grade, instead of giving my teacher an apple, I promised her a living wage. That's how. And so I, this was kind of and I have to tell you, because my uncles were killed prematurely, I got to hear from everyone that was never able to tell them how much their call to service meant in their lives. Because I was a Kennedy and a congressman, so I got to go to all these places, people would come up to me and tell me that their lives were changed forever when they heard President Kennedy to say, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." I can't tell you how many people changed their lives when they heard that, because they felt that they were needed. They felt they had something that they could contribute. They felt a sense of value. And if you want to address social isolation, the first and foremost, you've got to give people a sense of purpose and self-worth. And no matter what walk of life you're in, you can do that. And thankfully, we have the model originating with the Peace Corps, but being expanded to VISTA and the AmeriCorps program. And we now have corps everywhere in this country. And we can have environmental conservation corps. We have recovery corps for people to help build sustainable recovery community organizations. You have senior citizen corps, where they're foster grandparents, where they help read to kids, where they join daycare centers and are another kind of adult in the room that can watch kids play. Because I know, for my part, all my child wants from me is to, when he looks up to see if I'm watching him play Legos, he wants to know that I'm looking at him. And that's what little kids want. They want to know they're in your line of sight. And we're all so busy on our phones. And I have to intentionally, thanks to the fact that I'm in mental health, I know this stuff because I'm surrounded by a bunch of folks like you who remind me, you got to be intentional. Put that thing down. The strongest foundation you can provide for your child's emotional mental health is to make sure that they've got your complete attention when you're with them. And so I don't think it's going to be a hard thing to figure out. I mean, we can have all the systems changes, and believe me, in mental health, I'm up to my ears in boiling the ocean on, better prevention, better treatment, better recovery, building systems that ultimately get paid for, because if you're not putting money in the system, you're never going to get any of this stuff moving. But ultimately paying for things that have the biggest impact writ large, because too many of us in this movement are so consumed with the terrible tragedies of every individual case, we lose sight of the fact that we could make a dramatic difference in the total number of people who are dying of these illnesses if we looked at it from a public health point of view. Dramatically. And so I think the goal here is obviously to not only put those systems in place, and we need all kinds of, curated to-dos for this part of the system, that part of the system, surveillance, data, everything. But at the end of the day, we need a culture that says everybody has a role to play. And it can be in your place of work, you're helping your colleagues. Because we all have to be allies to the people around us, to our family members, in our schools and communities, in our government. We all have a role to play, some different roles than others, but everybody needs to be imbued with the sense that we're all in this together. And that sense of purpose and belonging goes hand in hand. And I'll just conclude with this. I had the honor of dedicating the John F. Kennedy Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center trains all the Green Berets in our country. And President Kennedy was the one that awarded the wearing of the Green Berets. So they thought, have a Kennedy come down. I happen to be in Congress, so it made sense for me to come down and give the speech. And of course, I get taken around by General Hugh Shelton, who was going to be the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs who was a Green Beret later on in his career. And he read my CV. So he stopped me as we're taking a tour, and he said, "Congressman, the Green Berets have more mental health than any other branch of the service." And I'm like, "Jeez, General, the thing has my family name on it. Do you not think I'm going to be supporting you? Of course I'm going to support you. You don't have to tell me, butter me up with how great mental health is, because we all know, honestly, General, these Green Berets don't need mental health. They jump out of airplanes and they hit the water and they're swimming underwater for 5 miles without breathing, and then they come out on the beach and they speak 6 languages, and they take out their target and they're reading to their kids by bedtime. These guys don't need mental health." And he said, "Congressman, you don't understand." And I did not understand. He said, "We look at mental health as a force multiplier." And of course, I'm all around the disease model of mental health. Like, we got to treat it after it becomes pathologized, after people get sicker and sicker and sicker. But their model in the Green Berets is to look at how to maximize your optimum potential as a human being for the military in order to execute a military, project. So they cannot have Green Berets in the field doing anything if that Green Beret has intrusive thoughts in their head. If they're wondering what's going on back at home, if they're worried about their spouse, their kids, what have you. It'll take them away from their mission preparedness, their mission readiness. And I thought to myself, if all Americans could hear that the top of the top, the creme de la creme of the U.S. military, looks at mental health as the differentiator between being average and being the best of the best. We're all Americans. We want to be happier, healthier, look better, eat better, whatever you want. We're all that more and more and more. We want to, get everything that keeps us younger, happy. The answer is mental health. It's an ability to self-modulate. It's an ability to correct counterproductive thinking patterns. It's an ability to have insight to those self-destructive patterns of behavior that, sideline us when we could be living our best selves, but if we can't acknowledge and identify them, then we're never going to be of maximum use to anyone around us. Imagine in America if we said, I have to really focus on my ability to be of service to others, and the way I maximize my ability to be of service to others is to make sure I am able to maximize my own healthy health, mental health, because health is mental health. We would have people who are not locked in their amygdalas, our country today is locked in their amygdalas. They do not have their prefrontal cortex working in this country right now. And the honest truth is it's fear, insecurity, which breed hate and intolerance, and it's a devolution because people have lacked insight to the fact that they're living in their amygdalas. We don't train anybody to understand how they can help guide their own thinking and to be intentional. And I'll conclude with this. If you give people an opportunity to serve, everything else will take care of itself because they're going to get that good vibe. That was why we're like, it's so counterproductive. We're all thinking, me, give me my money. I want to be better. I want to be happier. When we stop and ask what we could do for someone else, boom, we're like, whoa, that felt good. And I'm taught, because I need someone to teach me this, like, you've got to be intentional. Smile at someone, ask how they're doing, open the door for them. Don't cut them off, Then, what can you do? Other things you can do to help people. Everyone, as Martin Luther King said, everybody can serve. And if people serve, you're not going to have to educate them on citizenship and loneliness and connectedness and anything else. Because if they get this, it's like someone who's now addicted to service. Like I do what feels good. And because I'm not doing drugs and alcohol anymore, I got to find other ways to feel good. And, I am telling you, thankfully, I get to do that every day because I'm surrounded by people who I can do something for. And if we give everybody an option to do something for someone else, it's not, you don't have to educate them, give them a sizzle reel, give them a curricula, they'll figure it out. We have to give this country a sense that everybody has a role to play. Everybody can make this country stronger, and they can make their community stronger. And who doesn't want to be part of something bigger than themselves? And so I love what you guys are doing for the mental health. You're not here for mental health, but you are, because if we get your mission done right, believe me, there are going to be less people who will need mental health down the line because they're not going to have that isolation that really pathologizes mental illness. The worst thing you can do for someone is lock them up in solitary confinement. Worst thing you could do for someone with addiction is isolate them, marginalize them. They'll just get worse and worse. In recovery, that's the key, whether you're from mental illness or addiction, is social connection. That's why we're fighting for the clubhouse model. That's why we're fighting for reimbursement for sober living. It's why we're fighting for recovery workplaces so people can be supported. Because if people feel they're embraced, nothing can stop us. Thanks so much.